This is a bone stock Dodge Viper GTS that I purchased in 2021 for a cool 45 grand. And today we're going to race this 30-year-old redneck supercar against an interesting array of performance vehicles, starting with my buddy's supercharged Audi S4. Then we'll go head-to-head with Oakland's favorite muscle car, a Dodge Challenger Scat Pack with a 392 Hemi. After that, we'll find out what the Viper can do against one of the best Mustangs ever built, the modern Shelby GT350. The next level features a proper V10 battle against this ridiculously good-looking Audi R8 with a 600 horsepower V10. Finally, we'll face off against the Viper's arch nemesis and one of the best sports cars ever built, a mint C6 Z06 Corvette. I'll also show you the modifications I've done over the years that have really brought this dinosaur back to life. And maybe I'll even share with you some genuine quirks and features about these Vipers that not even your daddy Doug knows about, like that the HVAC control module is the same one used in the 1992 Ford Taurus. So this Viper had 33,000 miles on it when I was handed the keys, and was in what I'd call A- condition. And I know most kids today dream of getting a new BMW or whatever, but honestly, I couldn't have been more stoked to drive this American icon 800 miles home, even if it didn't have cruise control or AC. The first thing I did when I got back was strap it to a dyno to find out how much horsepower its ancient 8-liter pushrod V10 could still get to the ground. In hindsight, maybe this was a little careless because I later found out the tires were legitimately 20 years old. Now, the engines in these second-gen Vipers are rated at 450 horsepower and 490 pound-foot of torque at the crank. But what does that translate to at the wheels some 3 decades later? In stock form, this Viper was able to generate 410 horsepower and 450 torque at the wheels. This represents about a 9% drivetrain loss and means its behemoth power plant is still running strong. Inevitably, at this point, the Euroboys start commenting stuff like
8 liters for an output of 450 horsepower is more than pathetic. European cars are far better.
What those folks don't know is that in 1997, Motor Trend pitted the Viper GTS against a menagerie of high-performance cars of the time, including a Porsche 911 Turbo and a Ferrari F355 Berlinetta. The Viper beat everything in the quarter mile, had the highest top speed, tied the Ferrari for first on the skid pad at 1.01 lateral Gs, and absolutely smoked everything in the slalom test, setting a Motor Trend record.
New high score!
New high score, is that bad? What does that mean?
The Viper delivered its final blow by setting the fastest lap time on a 3/4 mile circuit in Las Vegas. But anyway, what does 410 horsepower and 450 torque even mean? Well, to get an idea of the Viper's power, I challenged my buddy to a friendly race against his 2011 Audi S4 that's equipped with a 3-liter supercharged V6 making 330 horsepower. Now, this race doesn't really make sense on paper since the Viper's lighter and makes more power, but the Audi is all-wheel drive, so it should be pretty quick off the line. I also told Andrew that I'll give him the jump, which just means I won't launch the Viper until I see the S4 start to move. Our next challenger is a challenger, specifically a 2021 Scat Pack edition powered by a 392 cubic inch Hemi V8 that makes 485 horsepower. That chunk of American muscle is mated to a lightning-quick 8-speed automatic transmission. And believe it or not, that actually makes this challenger one of the quickest and most powerful naturally aspirated muscle cars Dodge has ever built.
Go!
The Viper made pretty quick work of the Challenger, so I tried giving it a head start to see if that would make for more of a challenge. Now, you may have noticed that the Viper's V10 sounds surprisingly quiet and constricted, so of course, I had to give it an exhaust system commensurate with its displacement. A pair of Bellinger's 1 3/4 headers made out of a ceramic-coated aluminized steel alloy. These headers are designed to let the exhaust gases flow more freely and to better keep that intense heat inside the pipes. I also installed a set of high-flow catalytic converters and a 3-inch axle back from Billy Boat to further reduce back pressure. The Viper is a pleasantly simple machine with lots of room in the engine bay for your hands and elbows hose, making it one of the more enjoyable vehicles to work on. After completing the installation, I returned to Street to Sand in Reno, Nevada to recalibrate the Viper's tune and find out how much horsepower the new exhaust system unlocked. With its new pipes and tune, the Viper was able to put down 458 wheel horsepower and 505 pound-foot of torque, which comes out to a roughly 12% increase over stock. The next logical step was to set up another race, this time against a 2017 Ford Mustang GT350 powered by the legendary 5.2-liter Voodoo V8. Even to this day, this is still the most powerful naturally aspirated engine Ford has put into a production car, and it revs to 8,200 RPM. What's extra neat about this race though is that these two vehicles make about the same horsepower to the wheels, but the Viper's powered by a big dumb pushrod with loads of torque, while the GT350 has a high revving dual overhead cam flat plane crank that feels more like something you'd find in a mid-2000s European supercar.
Let me shake your hand, Jerry.
Someone once said, don't drive your heroes, Jerry.
Yeah.
Their hero must not have been that car, because that was awesome.
That was so much fun.
Now you can't beat on your cars like this without some stuff going wrong. Even if you do change your oil as much as I do. And so the Viper's engine developed a pretty nasty tick. My hope was that it was just a bent pushrod due to over-revving the engine or something, so I removed the valve covers and rockers only to pull out a bunch of perfectly straight pushrods. I continued the teardown process by removing the headers, which allowed me to pull off the cylinder heads. Surely it's a bad lifter, I thought at the time, but all the lifters looked really good, especially for such an old engine. This meant I needed to get down to the timing components, which required removing the alternator, the upper radiator hose, detaching the power steering cooler, and removing this aluminum cross brace from the engine bay, something that looks a lot easier on camera than it actually is. This gave me a bunch of extra elbow room, allowing me to more easily remove the idler pulley, serpentine belt, lower radiator hose, water pump, and the tensioner pulley, which definitely needed to be replaced. Then finally, I was able to remove the front cover, revealing the timing components. The timing chain didn't show any major signs of wear, so I removed it along with the little thrust plate behind the cam gear so I could pull out the camshaft. And check out what I found. We can clearly see significant damage on the nose of this camshaft lobe. I double-checked the respective lifter and it did show some light wear on the roller, but it spun smoothly and the plunger felt fine, so my best guess is this was either caused by a weak valve spring or poor machining of the camshaft from the factory, but I don't think we'll ever know for sure. Now, of course, I wasn't going to do all this work just to reinstall boring OEM parts, so I picked up a performance camshaft from Prefix and also had them rebuild the cylinder heads with new springs and valves. And since these old Vipers run pretty toasty, it made a lot of sense to upgrade to a larger triple pass radiator, and how could I not throw on a fresh OEM clutch when they're only $200? After putting the Viper back together again, I returned to Street to Sand to update the Viper's tune and find out how much power it gained from its new parts. This time the Viper was able to put down 527 wheel horsepower and 567 pound-foot of torque. That's an increase of 69 horsepower and 62 torque over its previous best run, which is a pretty solid bump when it comes to making naturally aspirated power. Those numbers gave me the confidence to set up a race against this Gucci'd out 2017 Audi R8 that's powered by a 5.2-liter V10 making 610 horsepower and 413 pound-foot of torque at the crank. Second-gen R8s are also equipped with a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission and an all-wheel drive launch control system that, when combined, allow them to rocket to 60 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds and run 10-second quarter miles with ease. This particular R8 also has Audi's Sport Performance Kit, which includes shorter gearing and functional carbon fiber aero. The owners also installed these lighter BBS wheels along with an aftermarket exhaust system from HMS. But what makes this such an interesting V10 battle is that both cars make roughly the same horsepower to the wheels, but have completely different torque curves. And while people often think the Viper's massive torque provides an advantage, you gotta remember Vipers are old school rear-wheel drive manual sports cars with no traction or stability control, so keeping all that torque in check really becomes something of a burden. The Viper did do unexpectedly well from a roll, so with pretty much zero confidence, I did take a crack at the R8. This brings us to present day, where I've been on a mission to try and race every generation of Corvette. The only pair of New Balances I've persuaded to leave the parking lot so far drives this lovely 2011 C6 Z06 in supersonic blue. And as many of you know, it's powered by the legendary LS7, a 7-liter pushrod dry sump V8 born directly from the Corvette C5R Le Mans racing program. It makes 505 horsepower and 470 pound-foot of torque at the crank, which of course makes the Corvette quick in a straight line. But did you know this car also bested pretty much every German supercar around Nordschleife in its era? And that wasn't an outlier. Corvettes in general just punch above their weight. From braking distance and handling to acceleration and lap times, each generation of Corvette has more or less outperformed most supercars of the time at a fraction of the price. And while a Corvette will likely never garner the cachet of a Ferrari or Lamborghini, they are bona fide supercar killers that no doubt live rent-free in the heads of many condescending Euroboys. There's a bit of a trickle coming down today, so we're going to start with a roll race that goes from 20 to about 140 miles per hour just to get our bearings. Unfortunately, the Corvette missed third on our first run there, but that was setting up to be a much closer race than I expected. And at this point, I'm a little worried I might just get nudged out by a stock Corvette. Going on in this last race, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure who, quote, won the race. Here when I shift into second, the Viper gets a little squirrely on me, and I definitely lose my edge. But once I'm in fourth, the Viper starts to slither its way back, maybe possibly nosing past the Corvette. Unfortunately, it really started to come down after that race, so we had to head home. But the whole drive home, I couldn't help but think the Viper should have been faster, given that the Viper makes more horsepower to the wheels than the Vette does to the crank. So the very next day, we took the Corvette to street to sand to find out exactly how much power it's making. Now, these are some pretty strong numbers for a stock C6 Z06, but they're definitely within range. My next thought was maybe the Viper was down on power, so we re-dynoed it, and the results were enlightening. The Viper's down almost 30 peak horsepower since the last time it was on this exact same dyno. I also don't like this little detonation pop-up here near fuel cut, because the Viper's running a pretty mild tune on-shell premium plus octane boosters, so there's definitely something going on here. Now, I really didn't have a good guess as to why the Viper was down on power, since it wasn't throwing any codes or making any weird noises. But the spark plug wires on these Vipers are known to fray or crack because they're so close to the headers, so I checked those out first, but didn't find any issues. I then tested the resistance of the coil packs, and they all measured within spec as well. So I pulled out all the spark plugs, and while they didn't look great, I realized at this point I didn't have a good way to test how well they're actually sparking. So I picked up this neat little spark plug testing tool that allows me to simulate firing plugs all the way up to 9,000 RPM. And the plug you see here now is a brand new NGK for my R8. This is what a perfectly working spark plug looks and sounds like. Now we'll drop in a plug from an A4 that has over 120,000 miles on it. Even after a decade of use, this plug seems to be firing fine. Now let's test one of the plugs from the Viper. As you can see in here, this plug is barely firing after only 500 miles of use. So it's no wonder the Viper's down on power. And now I'm wondering if these fine wire plugs were the cause of the repeated detonation we saw when tuning the Viper in the last episode. This forced us to reduce timing quite a bit, which means we may be leaving some power on the table. So in the next Viper episode, we'll first replace the spark plugs with a set from Brisk Racing to see if the Viper regains its power. Then we'll install a set of 1.7 rocker arms from Harlan Sharp to find out exactly how much power can be gained by just increasing the rocker arm ratio on a pushrod V10. Now I also need to prepare the Viper for this year's Virginia City hill climb, so we'll also be improving the Viper's braking and handling by upgrading to these gorgeous 5th gen calipers and mounting a very special set of wheels and tires that I can't wait to show you guys.